So today we can leave it over there as well. We should start on item 19, but let's talk about this chapter a little bit first. Well, the very beginning of the book, we see Kardec providing us all the necessary tools to really engage in the stories of mediumship per se with an open mind, knowing what we are facing, knowing how to talk about it. Keep in mind that this is the second book of the codification. The first book, being the Spirit's book, is a book that encompasses all of the other books of the codification. Keep in mind that if for us who had already studied the Spirit's book for a few times, who have studied this book for a few times, it's still a little bit of a challenge. Imagine those who are facing this for the very first time in the late 1850s, early 1860s, right? If even for us who had already embraced this doctrine, to free ourselves from our atavisms, to free ourselves of all the hangovers that we still carry from old teachings. Can you imagine for those people over there then at that time? We always think, well, first of all, I always believe that when you study a book, you have to study a book page by page. Regardless of what's being presented, you have to present the book as it is. But sometimes we feel like, should we engage straight into the teachings of mediumship and bypass all this methodology, or are they spirits? So we already know that there are spirits. Personally, I never do that. I don't believe in doing that. But the thought comes to mind because I have the interest of presenting mediumship as quick as possible, because we know there's a lot of people who have the real interest in the mediumship in itself. But this is the sort of a doctrine. And we see here from Kardec word itself that the mediumship itself is not really the priority. It is extremely important. The doctrine is based on it. The doctrine is given to us through the spirit, to the spirits. So understand mediumship is extremely important, but it's not the main focus of the doctrine itself. And methodology. It's interesting, and nothing happens by chance, of course. Just on Monday, before we start our studies, our work on Mondays, two of our co-workers were on the elevator. I believe they were on the elevator going up, and a stranger, asked them, "Where are you going?" And they said, "Well, you're going to the Spirit Center, Genoa on the 4th floor." And the person asked, "What do you guys do there?" And they kind of had a mental freeze immediately, which is very common once kind of questions catch us by surprise, right? So where that came from, we need some time to put the thoughts together. They didn't have an objective answer right away, which is very common, happens to everyone. And I think they were kind of glad that the person left very immediately, and then they had to continue the conversation. And they come to me and they ask, "Well, what do you say?" Well, I say they're going to study this doctrine. If they ask, they want to know any more, we say it's a doctrine with three aspects. They have the scientific, they studies our spiritual nature, they studies the association of our spiritual nature to matter, that studies the not only the possibility, but the association and the communication between the two spheres of our existence. And as the philosophical aspect that studies the perennial questions of humanity. What am I doing here? What is the meaning of everything? Where do I go from here? Why this and what for that? Spiritism has an answer for all of that. And has the moral part that is based on the teachings of Christ. If anyone is interested in any one of those aspects, particularly, you can extend, not trying to force anything upon anyone. This chapter methodology is exactly that. That's where Kardec comes to provide us ammunition, provides us intellectual methods to talk about spiritism. Of course, for those who are interested, right? And we will find out those who are interested as soon as we present that what is the doctrine is. If anyone is interested, they will question. So when we think, should we just jump straight in the leadership itself, we see aspects of our own life that leads us to the certainty that Kardec was absolutely correct when he presents things to us like this chapter, methodology, how to talk to people about it, how to be able to read individuals around us who just want to waste our time, from those who are truly interested, for those to whom it is worth to put a little effort going further, from those who you're better off walking away, as Jesus say, those shaking the sand from the sandals and move on. This chapter provides us those tools. If you understand the chapter, any time that somebody questions us, and we have that immediate shock of the surprise from the question, we will be able to react rather quickly because we have preparation, and the preparation comes from this chapter over here. As put in the very beginning of the thing, that Kardec says that it is very natural and praiseworthy desire that adherents have, and which should always be encouraged, is that winning converts. I think it's very normal. And the very beginning, perhaps even go a little bit outside of the normal, that you find this wonderful treasure, you don't want to share with everybody, you don't want to spread as quickly as possible, and everybody has to understand and get it, because if you get it, everybody else has to get it. And we do know that it's not like that. But the enthusiasm may be so powerful that we have that tendency in the very beginning. And again, methodology brings us back, say, wait up, like it is, right? We have already read a number 18.
Right.
And there is one thing over here on the very last paragraph, and says, adherents need not to be frightened by the word teaching. It's not solely the product of lecture and stand or podium, but it's also occurs in simple conversation. Every person who tries to persuade another by means of explanation or experiences teaches. What do you want? For the teaching effort to produce results. And that's why we believe that our text should be that of providing a few words of advice that may be equally beneficial for those who want to learn by themselves. They will find the means carrying to most surely and quickly reach their goal. And keep in mind that this comes from an educator. Not an educator, but an educator of educators.
Yeah.
Kardec, as a profession, was not only just a teacher, but was a teacher of teachers. He teaches how to teach, right? So it's someone that when it comes to being able to pass what we have to others is someone that you should really listen to. And I think that the example in the elevator is a very good one, because we face people can come and ask us things, or you feel the opportunity to try to pass to others what we have gained for ourselves. Because if I think it's good for me, I'll pass to those, at least those that I care for, right? If it's good for me, it should be good for others as well. So this step chapter is important, even though we don't jump immediately into mediumship per se, but it's extremely important. And again, keep in mind that if even for an hour today, we've been here for a long time, we find ourselves in difficult situation trying to talk about it. Can you imagine these people over there, the early 1860s, who have never had the opportunity to study those things in a little bit of depth, right? So we start on number 19, please.
Okay. Number 19. It is generally believed that in order to be convincing, it is enough to simply present the facts. This would certainly appear to be the most logical approach, though experience has shown that it is not always the best, because we frequently encounter individuals who are not at all convinced by the most obvious facts. Why is this? This is what we shall try to determine. In Spiritism, the matter of spirit is secondary and successive. It is not the starting point, and this is precisely the error into which one falls, and often the reason for one's failure with certain people. Since spirits are simply human souls, the correct starting point is therefore the existence of the soul. How could materialists accept the existence of beings that live outside the material world when they believe themselves to be only matter? How could they believe that there are spirits all around them if they do not believe there is one within themselves? It would be pointless to amass the most tangible proofs right in front of them. They would contest all of them because they do not believe in the principle. Every teaching methodology must proceed from the known to the unknown, and for the materialist, the known is matter. Thus, before anything else, you should start with matter and try to show and convince them that there is something within them that is outside the laws of matter. In a word, before trying to make them spiritists, try to make them spiritualists. To do so, however, you need another order of facts, and you must proceed to a special form of teaching via other means. If you talk to them about spirits before they are even convinced that they possess a soul, you are starting at the end point, since they cannot accept the conclusion if they have not accepted the premise. Therefore, before trying to convince disbelievers, even by using facts, it is advisable to make sure of their opinion concerning the soul. That is, determine if they believe that it exists, that it survives the body and retains its individuality after death. If their response is negative, it will be a waste of time to talk to them about spirits. That is the rule. We are not saying there are no exceptions, but if there are exceptions, there would have to be some other reason for those particular persons to be less resistant.
Thanks. Look at that. Well, we got a very good idea of the brilliant mind of Kardec in this short reading here. How well prepared he was for to present us, to teach us how to go around about talking about spiritism. First thing is start with facts. It would be so easy and it would be so wonderful if all of us were able to simply take in facts objectively and accept as they are and use them, right? Because if just accept but not use, it's a waste of resources also. But again, all of us carry our atavisms, the things that it brings from the past that are so strong within us. All of us are somewhat being manipulated, being corrupted by the environment around us. That makes it hard to just plain accept facts, right? If you could just say, well, this is a fact. And again, a fact is not an opinion. A fact is something, all right? That is right, palpable in front of you, right? But we very often do not accept the facts. It's all of us. It's all of us. We see our political stage right now, or see the divisions, the radicalism on both sides, far right and far left. There's a good example how people will deny fact, will close their eyes to the truth of the reality because of ideology, because of atavism, because of pride. I'm gonna see over here, pride is perhaps the greatest stronghold for us to deny fact. To just present fact is not going to do it. It has not done in the past, not done in the present. And since it's getting more and more difficult for us to, and I say for us as human race, to be objective about receiving facts and just seeing them as facts, period. We always find the justification reason not to believe in what is right in front of us. In Spiritism, the matter of spirit is secondary and successive. That's a brilliant statement, right? And should come second. And it is a consequence that we will reach after some analysis of facts, for those who are willing to analyze facts, of course. And the example, it comes from Kardec himself. We can use it. If you use the method, if you use Kardec as an example, if you remember, he was invited to go to sciences and see mediumistic phenomena, physical phenomena happening. And he first concluded that there was inanimate soul, inanimate things providing intelligent answers to questions. Fact, period. He witnessed that, he saw it, he could not deny it. Second thing he did, rule out any other source of those intelligent answers. Is it a fraud? Is it this? Is it that? Is it a magnetism? Is it whatever, right? Rule out everything, all right? Once he did that, then he comes to the questions, right? What's happening, how it's happening, and now who is providing those answers. So he goes to a method in which the spirits was indeed secondary and successive, using intellectual ability associated with the moral quality that in this case is just allow him to not be hung up into other beliefs, not to be hung up with atavism, but be open-minded and free to analyze facts and reach a conclusion without preconceived ideas. That is a moral quality. So he does that and suggests to us that we should engage individuals in the same way. Let's live the spirits as a second thing. People gonna come to it by themselves if you present them facts. And of course, they have to be open to receive it, right? every teaching methodology must proceed from known to the unknown. Obvious, right? Obvious, but many of us doesn't really engage on that properly. Things must correlate. We must have some kind of analogy to things. For me, to accept, receive something that it's completely unknown to me, I have to have a correlation to something that is known to me. You know, the old that I always use in the past, then if a fish leaves the ocean and spends a weekend in Times Square, when that fish goes back to the ocean and have to explain to the other fish what it saw, what it heard, and everything, it needs to find correlation of things in the sea to explain the buildings, to explain the cars, to explain the loudness, to explain the lights. You'd have to have some correlation, right? You might use like bioluminosity to explain the lights in Times Square. There's plenty of bioluminosity in the ocean, right? You might have to use perhaps the coral reefs as the buildings with little things that people live, where fish live. So you create correlations with what is known. The fish know the bioluminosity, the fish know coral reefs, and then it creates an analogy. We teach what is Times Square, makes it easy. Without that, the fish will be completely lost. So Kardec tells you here, you must proceed from known to the unknown, right? And this is not new. That is the method of teaching used by the great scholars always. The parables of Jesus. Speaking with the things that people know, you speak to people that what people could relate to bring his very powerful messages. And that is done in Buddhism, that's done in Hinduism, that is done throughout. The easiest way to use is to make those parables, to make those associations, to have metaphors that brings what we know, what we can associate with, to the unknown that we want to bring to those individuals. Okay? We should do the same thing. And Kardec provides us means of how to do it. In a word, before trying to make them spiritists, try to make them spiritualists. So Kardec's thing, if the people does not believe in the soul, if do not believe there is nothing outside of matter, that all our emotions, all of our feelings, all of our memories, everything is purely material. The brain is everything, and everything comes from the brain. How can you talk to them about spirits? Impossible. So Kardec suggests that let's bring the idea that not everything is material. Let's provide them enough information, enough facts to let they think, we're not going to convince anybody, but to let they think, that to open their mind, that not everything is purely material. There is something that is extra material. What is it? We don't know. Or something that does not fit with the physical laws. It does not fit with the laws of chemistry, the laws of physics, with the laws of biology. What is the difference between spiritists and spiritualists? Spiritualist is anyone who believes in something extra material, right? Something more than just matter. So all the Christians, all the Jewish, all the Muslims, all the Buddhisms, all the Hinduists, those are spiritualists. We are all spiritualists. So every spiritist is a spiritualist because he believes something more than material. But not all spiritualists is an spiritist, because spiritism is a very specific doctrine with science, philosophy, and moral teachings. Very, very specific. The word spiritism was created by Kardec, and I can explain that he felt the need, because it's a new science, is just emerging. They should have a proper name, its proper terminology, like all sciences have, right? So our first, when dealing with purely materialist, is to try to bring to them the notion of not everything is purely material. If you do that, they become spiritualists. Okay, may not become religious, may not accept Jesus, may not associate themselves with any organized religion, but become spiritualists because they now believe, most of those cases seem more pragmatical people, not only believe, but they will know, which is much more important and strong than those who just believe, right? But they will know there is something more than material, so they stop being materialists and become spiritualists. And if they continue interested, then they may become a spiritist. And one of the things that Kardec said also, that the goal of spiritism is to kill materialism, is to eliminate materialism, not to make spiritists, but to make spiritualists. And among those spiritualists, some may become spiritists.
Start 20.
I think someone has a question.
I think it's that's really, you pointed very well, Amo, but that's really fundamental for all of us that have studied Spiritism for some time, and sometimes are faced with the challenge of explaining Spiritism to others. And I know Wayne has been doing this for many years, right? And I am actually curious to hear, what the challenges that you are facing, because to start, I think it's important for us to remember that if the person does not believe in the survival of the soul and has no interest in changing their beliefs, let's not waste our time, as Kardec says here, right? In the last paragraph, it's a waste of time to talk to them about spirits if the response is negative. So that's a start, because what happens is that we see many people that find Spiritism and become very enthusiastic about it and try to convince everybody around them. And it is a challenge and can be very frustrating, because some people that even believe in spirituality, that are, believe in the survival of the soul, but they're more focused on the material life, and they're not really interested in learning more about spiritual nature or anything, or the causes and consequences. So, we have to, I think what Kardec is teaching us here is to go step by step, right? Do you believe in the survival of the soul? Yes or no? If the answer is no, we stop the conversation there. If the answer is yes, then we can continue. What do you think happens to us after we leave the physical body? We go to heaven or hell or purgatory. Well, and then we can have an intelligence conversation about that, right? And from spiritualists to spiritists, and be very comfortable, because the other day I was talking to someone that said, some people they need structure, they need guidance, they need the organized religion to dictate how their life should be lived, because that's how they feel comfortable about it. And we shouldn't try to change those people, because we don't know their each one's struggles and difficulties. So if we try to bring someone that is used to follow the teachings of his or her church, and it's very comfortable with that, we risk creating confusion that it can be more damaging than beneficial to that person, right? So, I think it's a step-by-step conversation going from what they know and accept to what they are open to receive. But I'm sure Kardec continues discussing that, so I'm going to stop here. Yes, Wayne.
Just a question, Elmo. You stated that the goal or something. The goal of Spiritism is to make materialists spiritualists. Is that correct?
Yes, to eradicate materialism. The word of Kardec is to eradicate materialism.
Do that first step. Okay.
And now understand there is a big difference between spiritualist and spiritist. But if you can eradicate materialism, we will establish the dominance of spiritualism amongst the human race. And amongst the spiritualists, some may become spiritists.
And I think that when we look at the world today, I don't think that that's a big problem here in the US, because most people are spiritualists. I believe between 80 and 90% of Americans are spiritualists, believe in something. But it is a big problem in Europe and some other parts of the world, that materialism, the lack of belief in spirituality has been growing, especially in Europe, some other former communist countries also, because communism tried to abolish religion. So you have China, which is there is a large number of non-believers. You have that in Russia. So again, when Kardec talks about this, we have to think outside of the US, because I don't think that's a problem for the US. I don't see it. There is a growing number of disillusion with religions here in this country. People claiming not to follow any particular religion, but they continue to be spiritualists. So I think that's an important distinction also. When we talk about the number of people that go to churches in the US is declining. Yes, but they don't stop believing that the soul survives, that we survive after death. So we have to also be careful in understanding this difference. Back to you, Amo.
Okay. If no more comments or questions, item 20.
Okay, number 20. We must distinguish between two classes of materialists. In the first class are those who are theoretical materialists. There is no doubt in them, but rather absolute denial, arrived at through their own reasoning. In their view, humans are nothing more than a machine that functions while assembled, and which breaks down and leaves only a skeleton at death. Their number is happily quite restricted, and they do not represent an openly declared school of thought. We do not need to point out the deplorable effects that would result for the social order if some such doctrine were popularized. We have dealt with this matter quite sufficiently in the Spirit's book, number 147, and section 3 of the conclusion. When we stated that disbelievers stop doubting when faced with a rational explanation, we must make an exception of radical materialists who deny every power and any intelligent principle apart from matter. Most of them hold to their opinion out of pride and believe that they must maintain it out of self-respect. They persist in it in spite of all evidence to the contrary, because they do not want to lose face. Nothing can be done with people like these. No one should be fooled by their false expression of sincerity when they say, "Show me and I'll believe it." Then again, there are those who are more honest, who bluntly say, "Even if you show me, I won't believe it."
Thanks. So I think when Kardec starts saying we must distinguish between two classes of materialists, more than what we read over here, go a little bit farther and say we might be able to go a little bit deeper and understand the person to whom I'm talking to have an ability to read that person for what that person is giving back to you, of course, right? Not making things up from your own idea, from your mind, but what you receive from that person will gauge you to see, is this person one, materialist or spiritualist? Two, if it's materialist, what kind of materialist is this person? And we're going to see here what Kardec says about different types of materialisms. Okay, and from that, you will guide the conversation, or you will stop a conversation altogether, right? What is calling over here of the theoretical materialist is one who feels that he or she is not in need of anything. He or she got it. That's what it is. We are purely matter. There is nothing, absolutely nothing extra material in this universe. There is only matter. Everything that happens to us is material. All the energies are material. Sentiments, emotions, memories, everything is of a material nature, and everything is absolutely eliminated and dies with the physical body. There is absolutely nothingness after the death of the physical body. Okay, they have no doubt. They are absolute sure of what it is. They have absolutely denial of anything that is extra material. And how to talk to those individuals, how to try to fill a gap that does not exist. See, this is the thing here. There is nothing that's supposed to change it because it's already there, it's already filled. Pesce is absolutely convinced that's what it is. Okay. Now, Kardec says over here that it's the number is quite restricted. And you know that, for one thing, we know that faith is innate in us, is part of the essence of us. So being an absolute materialism is actually abnormal, so to say. You know, there's a chapter, the faith in the gospel according to spiritualism, and there is a discussion of innate faith. That when the most simple we are, full of preconceived ideas, full of atavisms, free from prejudices, we as human race, we have a tendency to have that innate faith. You know, the most simple, primitive, if you allow me the word, individuals, they have the understanding, the belief of something that is extra physical. They don't have the belief. This may be the power of the sun, it may be the power of them, but most of them have that spirit idea of the spirituality. All of them understand that it's a power over there that provides things and that take things away as well from us. That they have something that is extra material to whom they owe something, that therefore they make the rituals to honor those things or to ask for anything for those things that are extra material. They have that innate faith or something extra. Okay. In spiritualism, we studied that one thing that differentiate humans from animalia is one of the things is exactly that the innate understanding of God, that innate belief of the divinity. We have that concept of the divinity within us naturally. And it also talks about how dangerous it would be if it was the other way around. If we as human beings believe purely on the physical and there is nothing extra physical, there's nothing after death, that all that we do here ends up with the physical body. To maintain a purely moral, ethical values would be difficult. I really praise, and I always say that those who are absolutely materialist and are still good individuals. Because for most of us, we still do good out of fear of doing bad and end up in hell. Right? If you eliminate that possibility that you can do whatever you want to do because everything gonna end up that of the physical body, why should it be so ethical? Why should it be so honest? Why should I like to take advantage of this opportunity here because it's the only thing that I have? Why should I respect those 10 commandments for? Everything ends here anyway. So if majority of us were purely materialists, so that's the way Prakadek presents here, I think it would be a very chaotic world if humanity have not eradicated itself throughout the time. Those individuals are extremely closed and to conversation. They will stick to what they have. And even if you present the fact, and again, as Akadek says, no, I mean, fact is not everything. They'll tell them, you should, even if you show me, I will not believe it. And there are those who will say, show me and I'll believe it, but it's just out of the mouth. It's not from the heart. It's not using the intelligence of the heart. For those individuals, it's very difficult because again, we can always justify our actions. We can also justify what we choose to believe or not to believe. And again, it's choices. Right? And those individuals, these individuals, they don't feel the need. They don't have a void. They have that part of our, whatever you call it, an intelligence that deals with explaining things that happen to our lives. They already got the explanation. Everything is material. It's a product of the brain. It's a product of the society where we live. Is a product of the environment where we live, and that's it. So they don't have any need. They are complete. And how can we give something to someone who's already completed? There is no way to do so. Can you continue reading or any comments, questions? Okay, 21.
Yes, 21. The second class of materialist, which is much more numerous than the first class, since materialism is an unnatural sentiment, includes those who are such out of indifference, and we might add, out of lack of something better. These have not deliberately chosen materialism, and their greatest desire is to believe, for they are tormented by uncertainty. They feel a vague aspiration about the future, but this future has been presented to them in a light that their reason cannot accept. Hence their doubt and therefore disbelief. For them, disbelief is not based on any kind of theory. As soon as you present them with something rational, they will eagerly accept it. They are capable of understanding us, since they are closer to us than they might suppose. With the first group, do not talk about revelation or angels or heaven, because they will not understand you. Instead, place yourselves on their own turf and prove to them, first of all, that the laws of physiology are powerless to explain everything. The rest will follow later. The situation is otherwise when this belief is not preconceived, because in that case, belief is not completely non-existence. Rather, it remains as a latent sprout that has been choked by weeds, but which a spark can bring back to life. These individuals are like blind persons who have received their sight and are happy at seeing the light, or like a shipwreck victim who has been tossed a life preserver.
Thanks. So Kardec jumps here to the second class of materialists, which are a lot more numerous. And those are the ones who have a void. So we talk about the first one. The first one does not have a void. The one is complete. They fill that void with a theory, the theory of materialism. And they're comfortable with that. Leave them alone, because a waste of time trying to do anything. The second one, they do have that void. But, as Kardec says, includes those who are such out of indifference, and we might add out of lack of something better. So the void is there, but they are indifferent, they don't care. They would say, yes, there is something, I'll do that later. Yeah, something cannot be explained by our science, but I don't care, it doesn't matter. As long as I can make my money and pay my bills, then I'm happy. Very different, the whole thing. And there are those who have the void, they are searching, and unfortunately, what has been provided to them does not fulfill that void. What they have encountered as an explanation, as something that could fill that void, clashes with the intellect. I personally say there is fault of religions, not a specific one religion, but religions have failed to accommodate themselves or to move with the intellectual progress, come to a point that we become too smart to believe in something that it's obviously disputed or proved scientifically not to be factual. And if you have that intellectual ability, we always start to reject those things, and you continue to have that void. Again, using the Santa Claus as an example, come one point in our existence in a Western world, of course, or even more in a Western Christian world, that believe in Santa Claus is even health, it's good. But will come a point that the individual, as is mature intellectual, will question the true existence of Santa Claus. And upon question, come to the conclusion that no, there is no Santa Claus. And if you try to do that too early, it may be traumatic. And if you try to persist or to insist that this person might continue to believe in Santa Claus, it will be equally traumatic to that individual. So there are materialists out there who right now are materialists, but eventually start to question. Oh, wait a minute, things are not really making sense over here. Those are the ones that are open for conversation. Or those who looked, found something, but those things clash with reasoning, clash with science, and it cannot be uptaken by them. Those are the ones that are open for conversation. Those are open to receive what we have to offer and make whatever use they want out of it, of course, right? I think, unfortunately, there's two things here. One, religion, and two is the scientific community in a defensive mode have created a very big wall, a very thick wall, separating spirituality from science. The two could not clash. Again, I'm on the personal position, that science should not take God into consideration those stories, but not scientists. Science itself should not put God in the equation, but not the scientists, right? And the way to approach those individuals has to be, again, step by step. Don't jump to spirits. Don't jump into angels and whatever. They are intellectually mature enough not to fall to those things, right? But continue with it. Since they have the questioning already, since they're looking at that void, let's approach with that same direction. There's things in our lives that our physical sciences cannot reach, that our social sciences cannot answer, that our studies in psychology and in the paranormal phenomena cannot answer. What are those things? And you continue that in that direction. Perhaps it comes to a point where say there is a science that seeks to answer these questions with reason, using the scientific methodology of observation and in some case of experimentation that is called spiritism. We can lead the conversation that direction to those individuals. Again, they have a void. They may be indifferent to it, or they may be lost trying to find where they can find a source to fill that void. They may find trapped into wrong ideas that they will not accept. They recognize being wrong because it clashes with the intellect. Or may they feel trapped in the scientific community. We inside over that very thick wall that does not allow them to go outside, and they stay with that void, but is still looking. Those individuals are open to conversation. One of the things that it's common for those kind of materialists is that they will agree that there are a lot of things that cannot be answered. There's a lot of things that we still need to learn. On the first graph, no. First graph, that answer, that's already done. And the second of the materialist, yes, I don't believe, but there are questions to be answered. And they may be looking for those answers, or maybe they may be completely indifferent to it. Those individuals can be reached. But those individuals, most of the time, we should be able to have a conversation with. Comments?
I think that one general class that that can be engaged in a conversation are those that talk about, I don't believe in God, because if God existed, we wouldn't have all the injustice in the world, right? So they are rationalizing the non-existence of God. And then for those individuals, we can enter some of these, we can enter into the discussion, right? Well, there is more than only the physical world. And if you start entertaining this idea, you can make sense of what's happening in the world and the injustices and the existence of God, the creator. So, I think that there is room for discussion with this type of people.
I agree. When the person says, if is already a conditional, it's not an absolute. If there was a God, or if there was justice, if this and that, it's already putting a conditional there that we can eliminate that if. But when someone said there is not a God, that is not justice, that is a half statement. It's not, there is no question, there is no room for anything though. But when the ifs, yes. If there was a God, there is room for conversation right then and there. Maybe I'm going a little bit ahead over here, and if I do, I'm gonna have to deal with that later. But it seems to me that there is, among those kinds of materialists, we have one, the theoretical, that we are done with. They have no void. They have the complete package already. So you can bring bring water for someone who's not thirsty. I already drank my water, I'm good, right? And there are the materialists who are materialists because nothing bad has been presented to them. Not reasonable has been presented to them. They do have a void, but everything that has been presented today to them cannot fill that void because it's outside of reasoning. And then there is the misguided spiritualists. They want to have no void because that void is filled with misinformation. This is perhaps the hardest one, much harder than the second group, because they have been burned by pseudo spiritualism. They have been burned by fraudulent ideas because we see in our spiritual center very often spirits is extremely rebellious because they believed in the wrong ideas. We have received spirits who are true antichrists because everything that was supposed to be Christian has done on the absolute the contrary of the teachings of Christ, but those who have done it in the name of Christ. We see that a lot. Those individuals are extremely difficult to deal with. The second group, the one that's been presented here, that those materialists have the void, are the easiest one to talk with. With the very third group that I thought that you have to remove what's there and put something else. With materialists who have that void, you just have to fill in that void. It's much easier than take something out and replace with something else. Okay, 22.
Okay. 22. Alongside the materialists per se, there is a third class of disbelievers who, although they're at least spiritualist in name, are no less resistant towards spiritism. These are ill-will disbelievers. They would feel annoyed if they had to believe because they feel that it would interfere with their tranquility in materialistic pleasures. They are afraid that their ambition might be condemned, along with their selfishness and the human vanities they love to indulge in. They shut their eyes in order not to see, and they plug their ears in order not to hear. We can only pity them. Continue 23.
I think so, yes, thank you, sorry.
Okay, 23. So as not to fail to mention it, we will point out a fourth category that may be called self-interested or bad faith disbelievers. They know very well what to think about Spiritism, but they openly condemn it for personal interest reasons. We have nothing to say about them, nor anything to do with them. If radical materialists are in the wrong, they at least have good faith as an excuse. We can correct them by showing them their error. But with this last group, there is a bias that turns all arguments to dust. Time will take care of opening their eyes, and will show them where their true interests lie, perhaps at their own cost, because being unable to hinder the expansion of the truth, they will be swept along by the current together with the interests they have sought to safeguard.
Okay, leave 24 also.
Okay. In addition to these overall categories of opinions, there are many nuances, among which may be counted disbelievers out of cowardice, who will find courage when they see that others have not been harmed by Spiritism, disbelievers out of religious scruples, whom an enlightened study will teach that Spiritism is supported by the very fundamentals of religion itself, that it respects all belief system, and that some of its effects are the awakening of religious sentiments in those who do not already have them, and the strengthening of them in those who are irresolute. Additionally, there are disbelievers out of pride, out of a contrary spirit, negligence, and fearlessness, etc.
Okay, thanks. So put those three together over there because my personal opinion over here, I would say all three categories over here are not more than cowards. Kardec put on in the third over here is a lot more generous than I am, of course. But these are all cowards. And that's why I put all the three together. The first one in 22, they call the ill will disbelievers. When it starts with having a contaminated will, that they made a choice of disbelief, and out of fear that that belief will clash with their pride, with their selfishness. They are making a choice to be disbelieve at least out of their mouth, because they feel that if they do that with the characters over here, they would feel annoyed if they had to believe, because they feel that it would interfere with their tranquility in materialistic pleasure. They are afraid that their ambition might be condemned along with their selfishness and human vanities. They actually make a choice here in which that what I have here in this physical world is too good, or I think that is too good for me to give up in favor of believing in these extra material things. And that is the one that he called the self-interested or bad faith believers. They give in to atavism. They give in to prejudices. They give in to the influences. They give in to the fear that accepting these ideas, these new ideas, would make them the weird ones, would deny them opportunities to conquer things of material value. They made a decision, in my opinion, very cowardly, that the values of social life where I live, in this material sense, is more important than any void that I have. I deal with those voids later. Okay, it's completely different than let's say, Confucianism. When Confucius says there is a divinity, there is the extra material, but we are here now, and we have to take care of us here now. The moral teachings that we might apply to are meant for us to have a good society, a society that functions, a society that provides to one another, and is completely in accordance with the teachings of Christ. But it's meant completely to make our life here better, and that's exactly what Jesus wants too. And there's nothing that we have to live our life here thinking of when we live this life here now. It's for us here now. It's for us to help one another now. It's for us to love one another now. It's for us to provide for brothers and sisters now, right? And if you do that as a natural consequence, or you have, a open credit when we go back to the spiritual world naturally, but we're not gonna live our life here doing things just to have that open credit. Confucianism is about our life here now, but aware that doing the right things here now will, as a consequence, give us, again, a lot of credit when we go back there. But we should not be so concerned with the future, should be more concerned with the present. That is so. Confucianism is not the self-interested or bad faith disbelievers. I want to make sure that everybody gets that. Okay, and then in 24, the one that it goes, the disbelievers of cowardice. Will you find courage when they see others have not been harmed by spiritism? It's one like, you go first, you jump in that water. If you come out alive and well and not missing a limb, then I'll jump also. When I see the majority is going, I'll stay behind, then I'll follow the majority. Cowards. All three of them, in my opinion. Kardec, of course, a much better person than I am, separated them from the two groups, but I put everything to me. All three of them cowards. Comments, questions?
I have faced recently, heard from in Brazil, there is a special category that I don't think Kardec mentioned here, but it's all of that. So I know of a couple of friends that were struggling, and they are both Catholic. They went to a spiritist center looking for a solution for their problems. The Spiritism kind of was in a way of helping them, was giving them some of the answers they were looking for. But at a certain point, they stopped going because they felt they were betraying the church by going to the Spiritist center, because they had to make a choice. If they had to make a choice, they decided that betraying the Catholic Church was not an option for them. And I find it very interesting because you cannot get the answers. You go looking out somewhere else for the answers. You find the answers or part of the answers, and then you are afraid to embrace the answers, and you go back to your old habits. And I think that's very human nature. And I find it interesting. And again, where we cannot criticize, we can only tell them, at least they know where to find it. And eventually, when they are struggling again, they'll go back and find their path again, back to Spiritism.
And I agree, I agree 100% with you, but first of all, there is nothing stopping them from the Spiritist side, again, from the Spiritist side, for them to continue going to the church, continue with all the rituals of their faith, or as we have example in Judaism, or any other sectors of belief or religions, and study and understand Spiritism from the Spiritist point of view. From their point of view, no, you do not talk to the dead, do not associated with those things. You're gonna go to hell if you follow Spiritism. That is from their standpoint. From the Spiritist point of view, you are welcomed to come and study and understand and perhaps apply or not everything, and continue with your whatever institutionalized religion you want to adapt to.
Yeah, but I think that and they were not. I think there is a problem for those that receive them, and I don't know them, the Spiritist centers. They should have been told that in the beginning, right? Coming here doesn't prevent you from continue going to the church, continue going to follow your beliefs, and I think that some Spiritist centers, unfortunately, people are not prepared enough to deal with these people, and they end up scaring them instead of helping them.
Yeah, and the atavism, right? The idea that the strong statements of Moses to not talk to the dead, associating with the dead is something that leads you to hell, or those things that people are so strong that still attached to those things and cannot free themselves from it.
When Moses said 4,000 years ago, do not talk to that, he was right. But to believe 4,000 years later that is still valid, it's it's really interesting, right?
Yeah, that's my point. That the greatest, and I'm strong to say, huge mistake of religion is not follow up with human intellectual progress. Stay behind, stuck 4,000 years ago, as we moved intellectually ahead.
Yeah.
$25.
25. Let us not forget a category that we shall call disbelievers out of deception. It includes those who have gone from being exaggeratedly confident to disbelief because they have suffered deception. Thus, being disheartened, they have abandoned and rejected everything. They are like those who deny Spiritism in good faith because they feel they have been misled. This is nonetheless the result of both an incomplete study of Spiritism and a lack of experience. If there are those who are deceived by spirits, it is usually because they ask them improper questions or ones that they cannot answer, or because they are not enlightened enough to distinguish truth from error. Also, many people only see Spiritism as a new form of divinization and think that spirits exist for the purposes of fortune telling. In fact, frivolous and mocking spirits do not waste the opportunity to entertain themselves at these individuals' expense. Thus, they promise girls that they will find marriage and assure the ambitious that they will receive honors, inheritances, and hidden treasures, and so on and so forth. The result, the frequent and unpleasant deceptions that serious and prudent persons always know how to avoid.
Thanks. In the very beginning of this methodology, Kardec puts very clear to us here, right? Those who would desire to become thoroughly familiar with it, being spirituous, must first also be made to a serious study, and submit to the subject and become persuaded that more than any other science, it cannot be learned without commitment. Okay. The believers out of deception are those who completely neglected that statement of Kardec right there. In other words, are dumb in my ignorant observation. Okay. They absolutely reject the idea that this is a doctrine that needs to be studied, evaluated. Reason must prevail above all things. Reasoning must prevail above emotions. Okay. Then they become prey of their own ignorance, of their own dumbness, and being so, they open that huge room for other ignorant, frivolous spirits to create problem to them. They'll transform them now in disbelievers. Now they believe. They do not believe because they're being ridiculed. They do not believe because they found fraudulence. They do not believe because they were being deceived. They were to believe because they were promised things and those things did not happen to them. They are disbeliever in one word because they didn't take the necessary time to understand the doctrine, because if they did understand the doctrine, they would never be asking frivolous questions. They would not be looking for ridiculous answers as, am I going to get married or not? To whom am I going to get married? Or my mom has a cancer, can send the spirits to make an operation, save her life. They would understand things much better, not be victims of their own ignorance that allows them to be victimized by frivolous, ignorant spirits who are plenty out there looking for an opportunity to do that. And for many who are opponents of spiritism, that will make use of those individuals' ignorance and laziness to put some effort and understanding the doctrine even before they say that they believe in it. They jump in head first and without any understanding of it, they call themselves spiritists. We cannot call ourselves spiritism if we don't put the effort to learn and understand this doctrine. The same way that you cannot call yourself a medical doctor if you don't put yourself to a medical school and graduated from it. And one big problem that we are facing today now are those who call themselves spiritists, and hurt the doctrine from the inside out. Those who jumped into the doctrine, those who find in the doctrine a good platform, a good trampoline for their vanities or something else, and hurt the doctrine from the inside out. I think that's the biggest threat, the biggest risks, the biggest danger of spiritism today. if you have any degree of vanity, if you want to use the platform, the doctrine as a trampoline for other things, you receive all the assistance that you need from the spiritual world to jump as high as you can on that trampoline to hurt the doctrine from the inside out. So when Kardec, in the very beginning of this chapter, put over there, that there is only way is to study, to understand, to reason, and then you'll be really able to use this doctrine as a trampoline, but not to fulfill your vanities, but give you support to undergo all the trials or the difficult atonements that you may have to face here with dignity, with respect, and passing along to others all the wonderful things that this doctrine has to provide to us. These are individuals inflict all that pain upon themselves. And of course, they have to deal with the consequences of that. It's very easy for us to say, oh, for those who misguided them, those who fooled them, yes, they will have to do the consequences of their actions. They'll be very much responsible for all of that data, but we have to look at ourselves first. If somebody comes into my house, offer me, I don't know, cocaine, and gives all the wonders and all the beautiful feelings that I get from using that thing, and I take it, it's my fault. That person has to deal with their own responsibility, but I made a choice of making use of that thing that was being given to me, of believing in nonsensical ideas that have been brought to me. My responsibility also. And unfortunately, is one thing that has to be very careful, especially today, with the means of communication being so widespread and so easily to find, to separate what's being out there, what is in accordance to the teachings of Jesus, in accordance to the teachings of Kardec, that we can call true spiritism, on a lot of the things out there that's being labeled as spiritism, but it's not. And it is our responsibility, individually and then for the community, for this and for the doctrine as well. Okay, comments, questions? 12:26, I think we'll stop here. But I have time for comments and questions, please.
I just have a comment. I feel like the last one regarding the need for study and understanding of the doctrine, because I feel like it's so hard for most of us to really explain to those people who believe that spiritism is fortune telling or some sort of like way of like finding out things about the future or psychic powers. And I feel like that's a thing that perhaps not so good interpretation and maybe the work of some people, right, like outside the doctrine or inside, or like maybe making people believe that this is it's some sort of like frivolous way of communicating with like the other side. It's something I encounter very, very often, and I feel like a lot of it, the person that's asking the question has this preconceived idea, no matter what you're going to say, because it's so embedded in their way of thinking. No matter, if I explain through like the philosophical, religious, or like anything scientific, they are so predisposed to believe what they heard, and because they're seeking out that answer, that's just to me, it's always a difficult path when they start with that, psychic and some sort of like preconceived idea.
I agree 100% with you on that. And the only remedy to that, what people are going to learn is how we live our lives, is what they see in us. right? That will guide their opinion towards Spiritism and perhaps toward us. Our behavior, the way we associate with others, the way you fulfill our duties in the community and the society is the answer for those individuals. Right? When Chico Xavier died, no one, opponents of Spiritism, those who absolutely think the Spiritism is distinct from healthy, could say one bad word about him. You know, pastors of different Protestant things, priests, some who would even said if he was Catholic, he would be canonized because the way he lived his life. Regardless of people's beliefs, our behavior will dictate what they think of us, and as a package, what they will see of the doctrine that we follow.
And I think there's also a sense of a responsibility of the self, right, of seeking out the information and also get out of that mode at one point, right? And I think that's an amount of responsibility that it's the person has to acquire by just following blindly some sort of percept that doesn't exist. At one point, I think the truth will come out, but there's an enormous amount of self-discipline from the person's perspective. And it might take, I don't know, years, decades to get there. But I think I also have to always give the person some sort of like a leadway because they have to take responsibility for believing something blindly.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next Sunday, we're going to have our Q&A session, the last Sunday of the month. Bring your questions and see you here. Okay.
All right.
Carol.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, John. Thank you, Sarita, for being, and everyone for participating today. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity to be together again as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Medium's Book, Chapter 3, Methodology. Spiritism applies to all issues that interest humankind, plus the belief in the soul and the spirits. Disbelievers or confirmed materialists may not accept these beliefs, perhaps due to indifference, pride, stubbornness, vanity, intellectual uncertainty, discomfort, or even fear. There is, however, the possibility for discussion at the right time. The right time is divine time. We can only do our part through discernment, patience, and an intelligent communication. May we continue our spiritual studies as a spiritist so that we may grow and evolve with greater knowledge, understanding, and wisdom of the heart. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors for the good and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us for our loved ones, our teachers, the directors, our counselors, the mediums, workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace and especially now for world peace and for those who are suffering in the spiritual world as well as the physical world. We pray for SGNY and all spiritist centers throughout the world that they may grow, expand, and be protected at all times. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. And may we remind ourselves now to go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity. So be it.